go. We're going to talk a lot. We're going to get the microphone up. I was using the Nexigo microphone. No wonder I sounded so weird. And hey, by now, the microphone should be pretty much at full volume. Okay. In today's video, we're going to cover string functions in Tableau. I'm going to open a calculated field. And if you don't see the menu on the right, go ahead and click on that little gray arrow on the side of the calculation window. And toward the top here where it says all, you can click into this drop down and select string functions. There are a bunch of string functions. We even have some regular expressions, some regex functions. I'm not going to focus on all of these. What I'm going to do today is focus on the top 6 or 7 functions that I use the most. So kicking it off, we're going to just go over how to create a simple concatenation in Tableau. In the data, I have customer name, subcategory, and an order date. If for some reason I wanted to create an ID using these three fields, I could do that. I'm going to start by bringing in customer name, and I will add to that our subcategory. So putting two strings together is simple as putting a plus in between them. Tableau says this is valid. But when I add the order date, we're going to get an error. So when we are concatenating fields, we can't combine two different data types, in this case, string and date. So what I need to do is modify order date, and I can do that just by wrapping the field in a string calculation, str. That will convert a date or a number to a string. So Tableau says this is now valid, and there we have our ID. Now we could leave it all combined, but I like to add a little bit of extra text. If you want to add your own text in there, like spaces, hyphens, whatever that might be, you can use singular double quotes and add your own text. So I'm going to add just a hyphen in between each of our fields here. Oops. There we go. Some plus sign. I'll hit OK, and I'll bring this ID field out. And now you can see that those three fields have been combined into one dimension. The next functions that I like to use a lot are split and find. So for this example, I've got customer name, and I'm going to create a fake email. What I'm going to do is take the first name and last name and just turn it into an email. I'll create a calculated field. And in this calculation, I'm going to use the split function. I'll increase the size there. Now on the right, if you click on a function, it'll tell you a little bit about that, which is pretty handy. I'm going to click on split, and this tells you what you need for the function. So in this case, we need a string, we need the delimiter, so that's going to be the character that we split on, and then a token number. In this case, our string is going to be customer name. And the delimiter, I'm just going to split the first and last name, and that's going to be a space. So Tableau is going to evaluate customer name. It's going to look for a space. And then the token number is asking which part do I want to return. I could put a 1 here. And let's take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to throw email out there on rows, and I'll open it back up. So you can see that a 1 returns first half, Alan, Alejandro, whatever their first name is. If I change that to a 2, I'm going to get their last name instead. So the token kind of says which side of the delimiter do you want to go. But to create this email, I'm going to have their first name kind of be the handle of their email. And I'm going to add @ sign. And then we're going to use split again, customer name. And this time we're going to find the second side of that split, and we'll add a .com. And if I hit OK now, We can even create fake emails. Now we're going to use the find function to extract a first and last name from this customer name field. I'm going to create a calculation. I'll call this first name. And in the window, I'm going to start off using a left function. So with a left function, it's asking for a string and a number of characters. That's going to return that many characters on the left side of the string. So in the customer name, if I were just to put a 4 here, for example, and bring first name out, we would just get the first 4 characters or the left 4 characters of every name. That's not going to work because we have variable sizes of names. So what we have to do is use a find function. Size. Find is going to ask for a string and then a substring. So I'm going to pass in customer name and I'm going to have it find a space. What this is going to say is grab the left of customer name up until you find a space. If I hit OK now or apply, you can see that despite variable lengths of names, it is going to pull to that first space. Now, you can't see it, but it actually is pulling the space as well. And so I'll put a -1. That will trim that space out of the first name. Okay, now we're going to use a similar function for the last name. I'll create a calculation. We'll call this last name. And here I'm going to use mid instead of left. Mid lets us start evaluating strings in the middle. And I'm going to type customer name. And then we need to do kind of the same thing that we did for our first name, which is tell it where to start. So I'm going to use find again. And in that find function, I'll put customer name and tell it again to look for a space. Last name out. And you can see that with variable lengths, using that find function will let us capture their last name. And same thing with the space on this side as well. Technically, there is a space in front of that first character of the last name. So I'm going to put a +1 here, essentially ignoring that space. The next function I'm going to cover is replace. I'm going to drag the email field we created out previously into the view. And we're going to create a field on top of this. Call it company. So what we're going to do is find what company our customers are working at. And in this view, we're going to start by using the split function. We've seen this before. And I'm going to tell this calculation to split on email, the @ sign, and to take the second part of that. I'll hit OK and bring out company. And we can see it's bringing out that second part of the email. But let's say I want to get rid of the .com. I don't need that to know what company they're working at. So in this calculation, I'm going to wrap this whole string so far with a replace function. And what I'm going to replace is I'm going to find the substring .com. And I'm going to tell it to replace it with basically nothing. I'm just going to put 2 quotes next to each other, no space or anything, and that'll essentially delete the .com. We'll keep replace short and sweet. Basically, you pass in a string, you identify the part of the string that you want to replace, and then what you want to replace it with. The last function I want to cover today is contains. I use contains all the time in Boolean fields. I've got product name out there, and part of product name There's a ton of information in product name, but part of that is the brand. So if I wanted to search for a specific brand, I would create a calculated field, call it my brand filter, and then I would do contains product name, and then maybe I just want the company Logitech. I'll hit OK and bring this Boolean field out to filters and select true. If you want to, a little bit of cleanup. In the case where maybe the L is not capitalized or for some other reason there might be misspellings or whatever, you could always use another function in there. I like to use upper. You could also use lower. And that's just a foolproof way in case for some reason some of your products are missing a capital L um, or something like that. Now, the last thing we could do is instead of just use a predefined string, we could leave it open to our end users. So really quick, I'm going to create a parameter. It's going to be a string parameter. I'll call this my brand search parameter, and it's going to be allowable values. It's going to be all. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. And right click on that new brand search parameter that I have and show that parameter. Oh, and right now it's showing a 1. Let me edit that really quick. Current value, we will just leave it blank. And I'll come back to my brand filter and replace this Logitech string with just my parameter value. So brand search. You can tell it's a parameter because it's purple. That indicates a parameter. I'll hit OK. And now we have a lot of brands here. Maybe Acme. If I search for Acme, hit enter, that'll pull up all my Acme products. So that's it for today's video. We covered concatenation, splitting. We used the find function, the replace function, the contains function. And as far as my case, that makes up 90% of the string functions I'm using.